1080p. I mean, unfortunately it's not on my unlimited. No, AT&T. No, we're good. This place is sick too.
We're going to be putting them all up here.
No, but you haven't seen like the whole thing. Alright. Alright. No, you're good, dude.
I'm gonna tape
Yeah, I mean, if the fact that I'm on 1080p, 5000 kpbs, and it's holding means at the worst case scenario I go down to 720, 2500. So we're good. Sounds good. See ya. Yep. Yeah, I'm gonna make something on Photoshop real quick.
The reporter believes that she wasn't.
Alright. Sounds good. See ya.
Who said it? Exactly. Did you hear that? What are your?
Alright, for you early streamers that are coming in early, just take a look at this place. It's so cool. It's so cool. Yeah. And now we go back to the main view.
Huh? Yeah, you're LA based. Like, where are yours? Or what? Oh, ABC. ABC.
But according to like police, I'm
Yeah. No. So tomorrow or not?
It's funny, we just had this conversation and I was like so mad.
Who said? I think the police. Yeah. You just thought because he's a bad guy. You doesn't have a white balance card.
No, I have a nice white belt. You want this or something?
Thank you, Shai Shang, for your daily, or maybe now it's every stream, $5 donation to theyangame.com to Andrew Yang. Sorry, stream. I'm trying to get the perfect camera angle here. Okay, I think this is good. Let me zoom in a little bit more here. I think that was perfect. Now it's perfect.
It's funny. And then I saw there was another report that said feminists for America. And I was like, and then there was another plan to have 60 rather. So that math doesn't work. I've never seen it. No, they always got their shit. You know, I get there.
We ain't got these things to rank. Start not kind of.
Where do they want it?
Like, this is their beat. So everybody that's their TMZ's bread and butter.
They also don't want to get it.
Right, because they're so they're already on it.
That was when they first announced. Yeah, you're
It was at the end of the last one. That song don't start was wait, who was it? The Yang No. Yeah.
I didn't think apparently.
It wouldn't be. It couldn't be that.
I was like, yeah, record plays.
Yep.
Yeah, right down there.
1, 2, 3. Sound check. 1, 2, 3.
It's not coming through.
Julian's bringing it.
It's already installed. It's not yeah, nothing to finger.
Outlets. I plugged in a secondary one here. If anyone needs more stuff plugged in.
Mike. Not good.
check.
Oh, not even.
You got something? I didn't hear about channel.
Mic check.
Well, even if you do live in Jefferson, it's still. But see,
Mic check. Mic check. 1, 2. Mic check. 1, 2.
It's not coming in. Yeah, basically they put the plug for this little guy.
yeah.
Over here, we're all plugged in, so I'm sure. Yeah. You were talking to the wrong guy. There is no one something to say, but I don't give a shit. I don't care.
Yeah. We think over life.
Middle of summer.
But then also take the time to spend a week. How many your pockets?
Mic check.
Wait, go get.
Mic check. 1, 2, 3.
Where'd she go? Yeah. Yes.
Mic check. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. Mic check. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2.
Hi, hello Jefferson. How's everyone doing? Hi. More. Wow, catwalk. I've never experienced the catwalk before. Yeah, it's not bad. I'm gonna step back though. I think it's probably better. Okay, well, my name is Kevin Munoz. I'm an organizer in Sioux City, Iowa. That's where I was born and raised. Went to school at Iowa State University. Graduated with a degree in biology. Not really sure how I got here, but after my degree at Iowa State, I went to Portugal for my master's, and I was doing a PhD in Italy in ovarian drug development for ovarian cancer. And in November, I paused that because there was a campaign that I was hearing about all summer called the Andrew Yang campaign, and I heard about the Yang Gang and how powerful this group has become, and the positive energy that a lot of people have experienced. And it was a feeling that it was just too uncomfortable for me to stay there. Knowing that I'm from Sioux City, I'm from Iowa, I'm extremely valuable in the political sense, and I needed to come back and do it the best that I could. And it wasn't easy telling my boss that I was going to have to leave. It's hard to explain what a Yang Gang in Italian is, but we did our best. And now I'm here. And so everybody got a card when they came in, correct? These cards are very important to me because I'm in charge of collecting all of them. So if you could please, before you leave, just fill her out. Your choices and whatnot, we'll have it. But I want to thank everybody for being here. For one, it's a lovely place, it's a lovely town. One great thing about this is that I'm able to see all of Iowa, which, being in Sioux City my whole life, I haven't really done. And it's awesome, I love it here. But now I'll introduce someone that you might know, Chris Hennings, the Democratic County Chair of Greene County. Everybody. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kevin. Hi, everybody. Always these lights always surprise me. It's wonderful to be able to all of you and to welcome Andrew Yang back to Greene County. He was here the 1st of February in 2019. So it's just almost a year since we saw him last, and we're really excited to have him. All of you and all of us are looking forward to caucusing soon. I have somebody I want to introduce just briefly. I'm going to ask him to stand up. He's not old enough to caucus. Kellen, would you stand up and wave at everybody? But he says if he would caucus, that he would caucus for Andrew Yang, and you might have noticed because he looks Helen. Okay? Andrew Yang is a problem solver and a nonprofit leader who understands what's necessary to bring the country into the next century. What we found when we talked to him the first time was how he addressed the issues and how he looked into the future. And so we're really, really, really excited to hear his 21st century solutions for 21st century problems. He's been focusing on bringing humanity back into politics, and heaven knows we need it. And so I am just so delighted to welcome Andrew Yang back to Greene County.
Hello, Jefferson. It's great to be here. Look at this catwalk. I'm going to walk out here just because it's so fun. I'm going to pretend I'm singing, and there's this giant set of dancers behind me. It's tremendous to be campaigning here, particularly in the run-up to the caucuses on February 3rd. How many of you all caucused before? Since this is a very heavy caucusing group, I got that sense. You all have so much influence on the future of our country. You're among the most powerful people in our nation today. I know it does not feel like it because you're living your lives. You caucused before, just routinely check out presidential candidates in your local theater. But I've done the math. Do you know how many Californians each Iowan caucus goer is worth? 1,000 Californians each. That's right. That's the power you have. So look around this theater today. How many of us are here together? I'm going to give a Trumpian estimate. There are 800 people in this theater. It's the biggest theater I think there are about 100 people here, but 100 people is still 2.5 football stadiums full of Californians. It's a lot of power here to turn our country in a new direction. Now, if you know anything about me, and Chris just introduced me, I'm not a career politician, I'm an entrepreneur and problem solver, and I'm here to address a challenge that we've been wrestling with as a country for the last several years that we don't seem to truly understand. And that question, that challenge is this: why is Donald Trump our president today? And for something even closer to home for you all, how did Donald Trump win Iowa, a traditionally purple swing state, by almost 10 points? Now, if you turn on cable news at any point in the last several years, we're getting a series of messages as to why he won. Like, what are the reasons that have been presented to us? Go ahead and shout something out. Russia, Facebook, economy, yeah, we're going to come back to that. What else? Yes, activated new voters who were anti-politician, let's say. Lies, money, business experience. Rural divide. Hillary Clinton is definitely on the list. Hillary Clinton, emails, racism, FBI perhaps, Facebook, all sort of mixed together, electoral college, yeah, that one, all mixed together into this potpourri and said this is why Trump is our president. But I'm a numbers guy, and I went looking through the numbers for an explanation, and I found what I think many of you will find familiar. Now I feel bad, I should back up, because you guys are like, actually like, sorry about that. Doesn't walk away, it's so appealing. So the numbers tell a very clear and distinct story that many of you will find familiar. We eliminated 4 million manufacturing jobs over the last number of years. And where were those jobs primarily located? Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Missouri, and 40,000 right here in Iowa. I have been to those towns, you have been to those towns, and after the manufacturing jobs dried up, the shopping district closed, people left, the school shrank, and that town never recovered. I saw the same thing play out in Missouri, Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, because I spent the last 7 years running a nonprofit that helped create thousands of jobs in those states. And unfortunately, I grew to feel like my work was like pouring water into a bathtub that had a giant hole ripped in the bottom, that water was rushing out. What happened to those manufacturing jobs is now shifting to other parts of the economy. How many of you noticed stores closing around where you live in this part of Iowa? And why are those stores closing? Amazon's the main reason. Amazon's like a spaceship hovering overhead that is now sucking up $20 billion in business every single year. It's closing 30% of our stores and malls. I was just in a mall yesterday where the JCPenney just closed. And you know that malls can go from cheery to eerie awfully quickly when they start emptying out. Most common job in our economy is retail clerk. The average retail clerk is a 39-year-old woman making between $8 and $12 an hour. What is her next job when the store closes? We're not sure. How much did Amazon pay in taxes last year? Zero. So that is the math for your communities. 20 billion out, 30% of stores close, you get zero back. Most common job starts to disappear. It's not just the stores, the malls, the self-serve kiosks, and the fast food restaurants. This economy is actually shifting towards automating more and more of the work that we do. When you all call the customer service line of a big company and you get the bot or the software, you probably do the same thing I do, which is you pound 000, say human, representative, until someone eventually picks up the phone. How many of you do that? Yeah, we all do that, because that software is terrible. We're all like, there's got to be a person working at this company somewhere, and I'm now going to find them. These ones. But in 2 or 3 short years, the software will sound like this. Hello, Andrew, how are you? What can I do for you? It'll be fast, seamless, efficient. You might not even know it's software if you didn't know what you were listening for. What will this mean for the 2.5 million Americans who work at call centers right now making $10 to $14 an hour? How many of you all know a truck driver in the state? Most common job in 29 states, 3.5 million truckers, 94% men, average age 49. My friends in California are working on trucks that can drive themselves. They tell me they're 98% of the way there. A robot truck just transported 20 tons of butter from California to Pennsylvania 4 weeks ago with no human intervention. Why did they choose butter for this maiden voyage? I have no idea. But if you Google robot butter truck, you will see the story. And at the end of the route, there was a giant stack of pancakes. No, there wasn't. I'm just kidding. I know. But everything else is 100% real. What will self-driving trucks mean for the 3.5 million Americans who drive a truck for a living, or the 7 million plus Americans who work at truck stops, motels, and diners that rely upon the truckers getting out and having a meal each day? How many of you been to Iowa 80 in Davenport, the giant truck stop? And we all have. And they proudly say that 5,000 people stop there every day. How many people will stop there if the trucks no longer have drivers in the front? A lot fewer than 5,000. We're in the midst of the greatest economic transformation in the history of our country, what experts are calling the fourth industrial revolution. When's the last time you heard a politician say fourth industrial revolution? Just now, 5 seconds ago. And I'm barely a politician. You know what, my wife and I joke that if she thought that I was going to run for president when we were dating, she would have run the other direction. This is not something that was always in the visions for the future. Like I tell people honestly, it's not like my parents were like, you're going to be president someday. They were more like, you're terrible, clean your room. But imagine being an entrepreneur who is getting accolades and awards for creating thousands of jobs around the country. I was honored by the Obama administration multiple times, so I got to bring Evelyn to meet the president. My in-laws were very excited about me that week. But you know that, unfortunately, the tide is turning against more and more people, and it's going to speed up because the technology is getting faster and more efficient, and human beings are what? We're not. We're staying about the same. I mean, I have 2 kids who are young. They're getting smarter. The rest of us are just hoping to stay about the same, honestly. And we're competing against technology that's almost compounding on itself. So I went to our leaders in DC and I said, what are we going to do to help our people manage this economic transformation? Immigrants are being scapegoated for problems that they have next to nothing to do with. If you go to a factory in Ohio, it's not wall-to-wall immigrants, it's wall-to-wall what? Robot arms and machines. Same thing if you go to one of these Amazon fulfillment centers. So I went to our leaders in DC and I said, what are we going to do to help our people manage this transition? And what do you think they said when I asked, what are we going to do?
Nothing.
Yeah, a person at another event made the Scooby-Doo like, ooh, oh. The 3 responses I got from the folks in DC were these. Number 1, we cannot talk about this. Number 2, we should study this. And number 3, which you've heard, we must educate and retrain all Americans for the jobs of the future. How many of you have heard something like that? And we've all heard that, right? It seems kind of responsible. But I'm the numbers guy. I took a look at the studies. Do you all want to guess how effective the government-funded retraining programs were for the manufacturing workers who lost their jobs in the Midwest? You're laughing. You know it's low because I'm anchoring you low. But you also know it's low because you know people. You know you don't have hundreds of manufacturing workers lose their jobs and have them all march out and say, I'm here for my coding retraining program. Like, I've been waiting for this. Like, that's not the way we are. It's not the way we operate. And that's borne out by the fact that these retraining programs have success rates of between 0 and 15% typically. Almost half of the manufacturing workers who lost their jobs in the Midwest left the workforce and never worked again. Of that group, almost half filed for disability. We then saw surges in suicides and drug overdoses in these communities to the point where America's life expectancy has now declined for the last 3 years in a row. You know the last time America's life expectancy declined for 3 years in a row? World War II is a good guess. Great Depression is a very good guess. It's a little bit earlier than that. It's the Spanish flu of 1918, a global pandemic that killed millions. You have to go back that far because it's highly unusual in a developed country like the US for your life expectancy to ever go down. Ordinarily it goes up because we're getting richer, stronger, healthier. But now it's gone down and then down and then down again. So when I said this to the folks in DC, one person said something that brought me here to you all today. He said, Andrew, you're in the wrong town. No one here in DC will do anything about this. Because fundamentally, this is a town of followers, not leaders. And the only way we would do something about it is if you were to create a wave in other parts of the country and bring that wave crashing down on our heads. And I said, challenge accepted. You don't know this yet, but you all are that wave. It is up to you to bring to our country a vision of an economy that actually revolves around us and our families and not the bottom lines of these huge corporations that are at this point sucking our communities dry in value, paying zero back in, and running circles around our government. So you have Amazon, this $1 trillion tech company, paying zero in taxes. Whose fault is that? Is that their fault? No, it's kind of their job to try and pay zero taxes, right? So whose fault is it? It's our government's fault. You have to be pretty asleep at the switch or corrupt to look at a $1 trillion tech company paying zero and say, yeah, that's appropriate. Like them paying less than everyone here, yeah, that makes sense. So this is what we have to change. This is what you have to change. We have to get this value that's getting drained out of your communities and bring it back to you. Now, you've probably seen a TV ad with my face and name on it. Raise your hand if you've seen a TV ad. That's good, because we spent a lot of money on those ads. And it would make me very sad. What's that? You're too good for TV? We're going to follow you to your device anyway. So if you've seen the ads, you know that I want to give every American $1,000 a month. And I know the first time you heard that, you thought it was a gimmick, too good to be true, would never happen. Raise your hand if you thought one of those things. Oh, that's very normal. But this is not my idea, and it's not a new idea. Thomas Paine was for this at the founding of our country. He called it the Citizens Dividend for all Americans. Martin Luther King, whose birthday we celebrated this week, was fighting for this in 1968 when he was killed. And I know this because I sat down with his son in Atlanta, who told me that this was his dad's vision, the guaranteed minimum income for all Americans. It was so mainstream in the 60s that 1,000 economists, including Milton Friedman, one of the forefathers of modern economic thought, endorsed this plan, and it passed the US House of Representatives twice in 1971 under Richard Nixon. Family assistance plan would have guaranteed every American family a certain amount of money. And then 11 years later, one state actually passed a dividend where now everyone in that state gets between $1,000 and $2,000 a year, no questions asked. And what state is that? And how do they pay for it? And what is the oil of the 21st century? Data, technology, AI, self-driving cars and trucks. A study just came out that said that our data, your data, is now worth more than oil. How many of you saw that study? How many of you got your data check in the mail last month? So if your data is now worth billions of dollars a year, and you are not seeing a dime of it, then where is all of that money going? Amazon, Google, Facebook, Apple, and the $1 trillion tech companies that are, again, running circles around our current system. If we change this and we give you all your tiny, tiny fair share of every Amazon sale, every Google search, every Facebook ad, eventually every robot truck mile, every data sale, every AI work unit, we can easily afford $1,000 a month for every American here in Iowa and around the country. Particularly because after this money is in your hands, where would it actually go? So where would the money actually go after it's in your hands? How much of it would stay right here in Iowa? Most all of it. Not all of it. You might get your own Netflix password. But most of it would go to car repairs you've been putting off, and daycare expenses, and Little League signups, and local nonprofits, and religious organizations, and Democratic Party dues, perhaps. This is the trickle-up economy from our people, our families, and our communities up. This would actually give rural areas in particular, a real path forward. And this would give our kids a foundation to stand on. Raise your hand if you're a parent like me and Evelyn. If you're a parent, you've had this sinking feeling that we're leaving our kids a future that is less bright, less secure, and less prosperous than the lives that we had led. You know why we feel that way? Because it's true. If you were born in the United States of America in the 1940s, there's a 93% chance you were going to do better than your parents. That's the American dream. That's what brought my family here. That's what we all aspire to for our families. But if you were born in the 1990s in this country, you're down to a 50-50 shot, and it's declining fast. That's why the parents feel the way we do. And unfortunately, that's why young people feel the way you do, because you sense that the deck has gotten stacked against you. This is what we have to change. In this context of historic transformation and economy that's not working for more and more families, this $1,000 a month actually becomes very common sense and even necessary and inevitable. Because we're in the most extreme winner-take-all economy in the history of the world right now, and it's about to speed up. So the question is, how do you rebalance that for families? There are very limited ways you can do it. Number one is getting this value that's leaving your community, yes, but number two is putting that value into your hands, because you are the best situated to be able to improve your lives, your family's lives, know how to solve your own problems, and this money in your hands would make you stronger, healthier, mentally healthier, and would give us the ability to look our kids in the eyes and say, your country loves you, your country values you, and your country will invest in you. And then have them feel that. People know when you're investing in them and when you're not. And right now, our kids know that we are not. And that is what we must change. So imagine every senior in high school getting $1,000 a month just about when they're graduating. Everyone takes a financial literacy class their first semester to make sure that they know what they're going to do. And then senior spring, we send them to another part of the country to live and work for a month, the American Exchange Program, because they're not learning anything senior spring anyway, so we might as well give them some exposure. Now this would be a real investment in people that would elevate the sense of citizenship that our kids are inheriting. This is the people-centered or human-centered economy. And this is the move we have to make, because right now our economy is driving us in the wrong directions. You're being told, we're being told, how great things are. Record high corporate profits, record high stock market prices, record low unemployment. But then you look around and say, things do not seem great around where I am. Corporate profits and stock market prices are at record highs right now. You know what else are at record highs in the United States of America? Suicides, substance abuse, mental illness, anxiety, financial insecurity, depression, overdoses. You know what are record lows right now in the United States of America? Starting a business for young people, getting married, having kids. The things that you associate with having a thriving society and way of life are all at record lows. But corporate profits are up. If your corporate profits are up and your life expectancy is going down, which do you listen to? We know which one DC is listening to right now. DC can't even see people in life expectancy anymore. It's just staring at the dollars. Washington, DC today is the richest city in our country. Think about that. What do they produce? We're not sure. But business is awfully good. Donald Trump said he wanted to drain the swamp, got a lot of support from a lot of people. I want to do something a little bit different. I want to distribute the swamp. Now what do I mean by that? Why do we employ hundreds of thousands of workers in the most expensive city in the country? Why wouldn't we move some of those jobs to Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Iowa? We'd save billions of dollars immediately, and I would argue that those government agencies would make better decisions because they were living someplace normal and not in the DC bubble where they just talk to each other. I'm for term limits for members of Congress. We should be sending them to do our work and then come home. Their job should not be to go there and then stay as long as they say, oh, I like it here, like, let me stay. You know, then they're fighting to stay and not fighting to do our work. I know how to pass term limits too. I will be your president a year from now. Thank you very much. And then they'll go to Congress and say, hey, we should pass term limits, 12 years, and that's it. But current lawmakers are exempt. Do you think they'll pass that? Oh yeah, they'll pass that the next day. They'll say, we do this for the people. But they're really doing it because they'd be grandfathered in, and they'd be like some sort of, like super legislator being like, well, like, I don't have a term limit. But then eventually they would lose, they'd get sent home, they would phase out, and then you'd have a legislature that actually was much more dynamic and responsive and answered to us. As your president, I pledge I will never take paid speech or speaking fees for personal gain for the rest of my life, until the day I die. Because if you're going to change the culture in Washington, D.C., it has to start at the top. If your president is taking $250,000 for an hour's work after he leaves office, everyone looks around and is like, I guess that's how we do things here. And then they start looking around. The fact is, when you start working as a high-level regulator in Washington, D.C., there's like a timer attached to you. What you're looking at is, okay, I'm going to do this job for a few years, and then people are immediately trying to tempt you with high-paying jobs on the way out. And so all of your incentives are to go easy on the companies because they're literally going to hire you after you leave. So you have to make it a one-way trip. You have to say, if you're a high-level regulator, you're not allowed to work for industry for 10 years. If you do that, then you become useless to them because, for better or for worse, they're hiring you for your relationships. And so after 10 years, your relationships with all the people that you know in government are turned over. In return for this, we have to give these regulators a bit of a raise, but I would say that's a very, very low price to pay for having a government that we actually trust to look out for us. So these are some of the big changes we can make if we actually recapture our government and make it work for us. And I'm someone who's come out of nowhere. None of you had heard of me a year ago, except for maybe Chris, because I was here. Most of you never heard of me. But I've already outcompeted half a dozen sitting senators, governors, members of Congress, because I'm laser focused on the real problems that we can see around us and on solutions that will actually improve our way of life. We have to stop pretending that Donald Trump is the cause of all of our problems. He's not. He's the symptom of a disease that's been building up for years, and we have to cure the underlying disease and stop yelling about the symptom. So we know our economic measurements are not working for us, they're working for these big companies, and that's what we have to line up. I know how misleading the economic numbers are because of my own family. My wife Evelyn is at home with our 2 boys most every day, and one of our boys is autistic. How much is her work valued at in our current economic measurements? Evelyn gets a 0, as does every other stay-at-home parent in our country. How about caregivers taking care of ailing loved ones? Also a 0. Activists and volunteers trying to do something positive? 0. Coaches and mentors looking out for our kids? 0 most all the time. 98% of artists, unfortunately. And a 0. I mean, standing in these theaters too, it's like, I love these theaters, I love these structures, but there is also a sense that's like, wow. Many of these theaters were built at a time when people came together more often and there were more resources to kind of bring us together and have artists perform, and now a lot of that stuff's getting washed away. You know, one thing that also is getting zeroed out that we don't think about, but it's crucially important? Local journalists. Almost 2,000 local newspapers have gone out of business over the last number of months because all their revenue went up to the internet, and you can't run a newspaper on that. There are 200 counties in the United States that don't have any local paper at all anymore. You know what does not function very well if you don't have local news? Democracy, that's right. Because how can you vote on what's going on in your town if no one's actually even covering what's going on in your town? Jefferson, these are the things that we claim to value most in our lives. Our families, our communities, our democracy, and they're getting zeroed out one by one by one. And the reason they're getting zeroed out is because as a country, we have been trained to think that economic value and human value are the same things. And it's up to you to let the rest of the country know on February 3rd that that's not the case, and that we have intrinsic value as Americans, as citizens, and as shareholders of the richest country in the history of the world. Fundamentally, what we have to make our fellow Americans understand is that the purpose of the economy is to work for us. It is not our purpose to work for the economy. The machines have to work for us instead of us working for the machines. Because the fact is, if we keep trying to race the machines in this way, we're not going to win that race. More and more of us are going to lose. And if we turn to that person and say, well, that's on you, then we're all lost. If you continue to confuse market value and human value, you find yourself in ridiculous positions, like saying that thousands of coal miners should become coders, even though that makes no sense. The only reason you would even think about it is if you think that, well, if you no longer have any value in our marketplace, then we're going to pretend we can transform you into something that does. Instead of saying, this is your country and you have intrinsic value because you're a citizen and you're one of the people that this country is designed to work for. We are the richest country in the history of the world. We're up to 21 trillion and counting. The resources we have at our disposal to improve our way of life are almost unimaginable, and I will prove it to you. 12 years ago, we had a choice. Bail out the banks for $4 trillion or keep Americans in their homes. Which did we choose?
Bail out the bank.
Bail out the banks. How many of us voted for that? None of us voted for that. And no one was there saying, like, what, 4 trillion? Do we have 4 trillion? Like, oh, the banks need it? Just like shove it across the table and hope no one notices. Call it quantitative easing. Maybe like people won't notice that we just chose the banks over ourselves, over homeowners, over American families and communities. I noticed, I believe most of you noticed. It disgusted me so much I quit my job, started a nonprofit and ran it for 7 years to try and do something positive. And I had nothing to do with it. I was just in the general vicinity. like I saw it happening, was like, oh my gosh, like what a train wreck. We've had all these people going to Wall Street and they've ended up tanking our economy. And they got to just run to the bank with that. So I spent 7 years trying to build a better route for our young people because I thought, well, we can show people that you can go to Detroit and Cleveland and New Orleans and start a business. That maybe would draw some of the talent away from Wall Street. But it turns out that my efforts were too little in the scheme of what we have to do for the economy. And that's how I decided to run for president. This is the case that you all can make. We do not have that much time, honestly, and Iowa is ground zero for many of these changes. You've seen it up close. It started on your farms with the consolidation and mechanization of many of those jobs. Then it shifted to your factories, wiping out 40,000 jobs. Now it's on your main streets, closing 30% of your stores and malls. You have to stop it before it gets to your highways. You have to turn the tide. If we miss this opportunity on February 3rd, what happens over the next 4 years? Good things or bad things? More stores close, AI gets smarter, the robot trucks get closer to the highways. We have to make this economy work for you and your families right now, as soon as possible. I'm not running for president because I dreamt about being president of the United States. I'm running for president because, like many of you here today, I'm a parent and a patriot. I have seen the future that lies ahead for our kids, and they deserve better. I will deliver better for them. Well, we need your help, Jefferson. We need you to get out and fight for this on February 3rd. I'll tell you, if you take this vision to the rest of the country, we're going to win the whole thing. You can imagine headlines on February 3rd, Andrew Yang wins Iowa. If we win Iowa, I guarantee you we win New Hampshire, because there's a lot of love in New Hampshire, and the third party in New Hampshire is libertarians. A lot of libertarians really like this. But we need your help to get it there. If you don't get it there, this may end up not getting out into the rest of the country. Donald Trump is our president today because he had a very simple message. He said he was going to make America great again. What did Hillary Clinton say in response? America's already great. Remember that? It's been a long 3 years, I know. But it is now coming to an end. That response did not go over well for a lot of Americans because the problems are real. We have to acknowledge their reality and depth and severity, but then we need real solutions that will actually move our communities and our country forward. What were Donald Trump's solutions? Build a wall, turn the clock back, bring the old jobs back. You know we have to do the opposite of these things. We have to turn the clock forward. We have to accelerate our economy and society to rise to the real challenges of the 21st century, like climate change. We have to evolve in the way we see ourselves and our work and our value. I am the ideal candidate for this job because the opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian man who likes math. Thank you all very much. You may not know this, Jefferson, but math is an acronym, and what does it stand for? Make America think harder, that's right. That's your job on February 3rd. It's your job to move this country we love, not left, not right, but forward. And I know that's just where you'll take us. Thank you all. Thank you. And now we'll use the
People on
camera.
the second level as well, since everyone's always so curious. There's also people to the left and the right.
So much.
This is a very
That's
interesting year.
beautiful.
By the way, guys, make sure you
Let's take some
donate to
questions. Now we're going to
presidential
switch. I think
campaign.
I'm going to get this mic, and then you're going to look at this.
Hello, and thank you for coming to Little Jefferson. We all appreciate how much candidates come and talk to us and stuff. I am in my 5th year teaching, and when I decided to become a teacher, I wanted to teach kids how to play the trombone. But part of my teacher education was active shooter drills. And the second day of, or the first day of professional development for last year's school year was not, yes, the kids are coming back. It's, here's how to make life and death decisions for your students, and here's what gunfire is going to sound like in your hallways, and they shot the track pistols in our hallways. So what are you, it was awful. So what are you going to do to help keep schools safe and keep, and shopping malls and movie theaters and all of that? What are you going to do to keep that safe?
Well, first, let's give her a round of applause for teaching our kids. One of my boys is in public school, the other one is in special needs school for kids with autism. So appreciate you and everything you do every day. My younger son's school had an active shooter drill a number of weeks ago. We got the letter saying, hey, he's 4 years old. So then I got this letter, I was talking about it with my wife Evelyn, and I was like, why does this seem like it's not actually going to make Damien any safer? So I started looking into the studies to try and find how many lives have been saved by active shooter drills, and I could not find a single incident or study that said anyone had been saved by an active shooter drill. I then started looking for documentation about whether this set of drills has caused stress, anxiety, uncertainty, and confusion among kids and families, and I found a whole stack. So to me, it's very clear that we should not be mandating active shooter drills in our schools. It should be up to the families and the community whether they want to run them. And if they don't want to run them, then they shouldn't. Because our kids are getting a terrible lesson with these drills. What's the lesson? That your life could be changed at any moment, that life's super uncertain, that your school is dangerous. That's not the lesson that they should be learning. They should just be kids. So that's the response to the drills themselves. Then you look at the actual episodes and incidents of gun violence. And gun violence obviously a very real epidemic and problem in our communities. I'm going to talk about this in a few different ways. The first thing is we do need common sense gun safety regulation in this country. You need to break the stranglehold of the NRA. But we also shouldn't... But we also shouldn't pretend that if we pass those laws that all of a sudden there would be no gun violence in our communities. And there are a number of catalysts to gun violence that we have to be more honest and straightforward about, in my opinion. Number one is that 98% of the shooters we're talking about are boys or men. So if you look at what's going on in our schools, we have many boys in particular who are showing up to these schools, and as the parent of a neurologically atypical boy, I can very clearly see that if you have the wrong boy in the wrong school, negative things can happen that generally just fall on the boy, but occasionally end up becoming externalized to the community in the forms of violence, particularly if the person has access to a firearm. So we should be investing much more in the way of resources in our schools, particularly for children who have special needs, like my son. And right now there's an act of Congress that says that DC should be funding this in our schools, but it being DC, they only cover 15% of the needs, and so most communities do not have the resources or teachers necessary. So as your president, I pledge the federal government will fund, instead of 15%, we will fund 100%. We will make this something that every school has budget for, so that if you have boys in the school who need more individualized attention or a different pace, then they'll get the kind of support that they need. Number two, we should be paying teachers like you more, and this will actually have a very profound impact. And that's not a feel-good thing, that's a data thing. Good teachers are worth your weight in gold in terms of improved educational outcomes for dozens of kids over decades, so it's a very high-impact profession. You should just compensate it accordingly. Number three, and this is related to the boys issue, we need to lighten up on the standardized tests. Did you all know that we popularized the SAT during World War II as a means of identifying which kids not to send to the front lines? You all know that? And now we treat our kids like every year is wartime. It's very dark, and it's keeping teachers from making the right choices in their classroom. The next thing we have to do, and this is related again to boys and men, we have to invest in technical trade and apprenticeship programs at the high school level in much larger orders of magnitude than we are right now. Only 6% of American high school students are in technical or trade programs. In Germany, that's 59%. Think of that gulf. And you know what's happening in our schools today. What's the cheapest, easiest thing we can do with our kids? Put them in a classroom, teacher, textbooks, pretend they're going to go to college. Just say college, college, college. The fact is, not every kid should go to college, and not every kid is going to go to college. And so we need to get more realistic about trying to create pathways for people who college is not a good fit for, which is, frankly, most Americans. So as your president, I will team up with Mike Rowe of Dirty Jobs, and I will say, like, these jobs are awesome. And then I will federally fund any high school that wants to build technical or trade or apprenticeship or vocational programs, because it's hard. You know what you need for these programs? You need an actual facility, you need tools, you need trainers, you need equipment, you need an employer that might want to take the kids on and help them actually tear things up or repair an HVAC or do whatever the heck they're going to be trained to do. That stuff's hard. So the federal government should make those resources available for the schools that want to build those programs, because we need those programs in the worst way. We need them for our boys, but we also need them for the economy, because those jobs are actually very, very resilient in the face of a lot of these technological changes I'm talking about. It's a lot easier to automate away, frankly, like a basic insurance agent or a basic bookkeeping job than it is an HVAC repair person or a plumber or an electrician. Can you imagine what it would take to make a robot plumber? It's next to impossible. It's going to be a human plumber forever. So these are jobs that we need more of, and that if we were creating them, then we'd have more boys and men going down paths that would actually give them a very stable, lucrative career. And that, in my opinion, is one of the things that we need to do to try and reduce the levels of directionlessness that end up cascading into very negative things. The last thing we have to do is invest in a mental health infrastructure that actually starts treating our people in the way that they need to be. And my brother's a psychology professor. I want to destigmatize mental health issues. I want to integrate it into our healthcare system, because a lot of healthcare issues have mental health involved. You know what I mean? It's like tied together. We're human beings. There's a lot of mind-body integration. And right now, rural areas are not getting anywhere near the mental health or the medical resources that they need. Like, you have to drive for hours. And a lot of that's tied up with the fact that if you get training or degrees, oftentimes you want to go someplace where you can make more money, and those are big cities and urban areas. So we have to try and balance it out and do loan repayment and incentives for people that head to underserved parts of the country, including places like rural Iowa.
So we have time for 2 more quick questions. I'm a farmer from Greene County, the Jefferson area. What is your ag policy compared to the Obama administration and the Trump administration?
Do you have any specific policies out of either?
Basically on your trade policy and subsidized crop insurance, federally subsidized crop insurance would be the main two.
Oh, thank you. Well, certainly on the trade front, I think it's awful what the Trump administration has done is dragged in Iowa farmers into a trade dispute with China that had nothing to do with Iowa farmers. It was because of Chinese piracy of intellectual property. And then they tried to make it up to farmers here by cutting checks. But you all know that it's not about just the money, it's about the fact that people made plans and investments and hiring in anticipation of a certain price, and then they pulled the rug out from under you. So you have my word as president, I will be supporting agriculture through our trade policy and not trying to make life more difficult for you. And if we do make any changes, you'll have literally months or years of notice, not like days the way that it happened under this administration. Bigger picture, I don't know, how big is the farm you're working on?
Just a standard livestock and row crop farm around here, around 1,000 acres and some cattle.
So I've been talking to farmers around the state, and I've been frankly getting educated a lot about it. And some of the issues that people tell me about as a farmer is that the economics are getting worse and worse, and that there are many of these farms that have are now competing against these like mega farms. And the mega farms have economies of scale and do things in like an industrial way that if you were an individual operation, it's very hard to compete against. And what that reminded me of really was what's going on in the rest of the economy, where it's like the big guys just keep on like tanking along and like gobbling up the little guys, and it's harder and harder for a small business or a small farmer or an individual operator to compete. So that's what I'm very, very interested in trying to make right by you. I've been told all these heartbreaking stories from farmers here in the state about how they've had succession problems, like if their parents want to pass the farm on to the kids and the kids haven't wanted to pick up the farm, and then the family's not sure what to do. I've heard about heartbreaking stories about farmers committing suicides at higher levels because of the fact that the economics just aren't working, and that we're pushing you towards these same cash crops that, because the numbers are changing, just are not actually giving you like the way of life that you've had historically. So as your president, I want to help small farmers in particular be able to compete against the larger operations in a way that's fair and sustainable. But I'm instinctively on the side of our producers here in Iowa and around the country, because you can't be a developed country that can't feed itself. And we should be treating our farmers as vital producers of the most important stuff of life, and not just, frankly, nickel and diming you and then trying to grind you into the ground.
I've heard since September 19th, the Fed is issuing $100 billion a month, approximately, with a debt load in non-QE or QE4, with the debt load we're carrying and $1 trillion deficits. How do you maintain a stable currency?
I love this question. So people are concerned about our deficit, which is now reaching breathtaking heights. I've run many organizations, and when you're running in the red, you look at two things. Number one, revenue, and number two, expenses. So the first thing is, do you have a revenue problem in the United States of America? Oh yeah, you have like the richest companies that are paying nothing or next to nothing. So if you put in a toll that harnesses some of the extraordinary gains in these big companies, you can get your revenue up very, very quickly. Right now, the tax I'm proposing, this value-added tax that falls most heavily on the biggest winners, gets you up to $1 trillion a year with a big up arrow attached to it. And if you think about something like self-driving trucks or AI, let's say you have self-driving trucks on the highways 10, 12 years from now, let's say. How much tax revenue will we get from that? Is she okay? Yeah, that's more important. How much tax revenue will we get from something like self-driving trucks? Right now, zero. Because who's going to own the self-driving trucks? One of the big tech companies that's regularly paying zero. So that's what we have to change. If you address that, then you can address the revenue problem and make it so that our government actually is benefiting from the productivity gains in some parts of the economy. Then on the flip side, do you have an expense problem in this country? Yeah, of course we do. And what are the most conspicuous expenses? Military-industrial complex, $6 trillion in the Middle East, $700 billion a year that we know of. So we need to take those expenditures and try and shift them towards areas that have higher economic output and also make us safer and more secure from the real threats of the 21st century. What are the greatest threats of the 21st century, if you had to just rattle them off? Climate change would be number one, right? Does an extra aircraft carrier make you more resilient to climate change? It's like, not particularly. So number one, we should be investing in taking care of our veterans when they come home. I'd much rather do that than buy the extra aircraft carrier. And then if we invest in diplomacy and our historic alliances, take some of our military industrial spending, push it towards infrastructure and things that we're going to need that are evergreen, then you get much more bang for your buck. And then the expense side of our government would actually be producing things that improve our productivity over time rather than have no effect or even negative effect. So those are some of the big moves we need to make. But one of the things that I'm so passionate about right now is that we have this position still in this country where we can do big things. The window is not unlimited. But right now we are still the #1 market in the world. We have the global reserve currency. We can make moves that make our people stronger and healthier and build this trickle-up economy because this money in your hands would circulate over and over again and would end up creating economic growth. In the absence of this kind of move, the extremity is just going to get more and more, frankly, unprecedented. So I'm concerned about the deficit, but if we actually have a mechanism where we're benefiting from the most successful companies in our country, and we start channeling our military industrial spending in more productive ways, I believe we can get that deficit under control even while we're investing in our people. Thank you, Jefferson. We need you to caucus for this campaign on February 3rd. Let's make history together and leave a future we're actually excited about for our kids. Thank you. I love it here. I love Iowa.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like a selfie or an autograph, we're going to go real quick, but if we could have folks line up around the side of the auditorium here, he'll take photos up here and we can escort you off this way. Thank you so much.
I told you guys on the YouTube chat that Evlonger just arrived. Alright, so this is what we need right now, stream. We need your money. Well, not me, but the campaign. The campaign needs your money. The campaign has set a new $3 million goal by the end of the year, January 31st. And I think that means to keep pace with the goal, we're going to have to raise something like $350,000 or $400,000 a day. And I think our total right now is at like $200,000. So, bottom line is, we need donations. And all donations through this link, where my finger is, count to that goal. And whoever has the highest donation, will get a personalized shout out from Andrew Yang himself. Currently, our donation leader for the shout out is Alexander. By the way, look at the theater. Check it out. See, there were more people up there as well. This place is sick.
Guys, I'm sorry we gotta move. Yes, I got the bus in like 5 minutes. Yep. There's no autograph now, guys.
We need your donations. We need your money. Thank you, Ison for the $8.88 donation, Andrew Yang. Thank you, Douglas, for the $5 donation, Andrew Yang. Thank you, Jorge, for the $10 donation, Andrew Yang. Thank you, Onasia, for the $5 donation, Andrew Yang. Thank you, Boris, for the $1 donation. Thank you, Alexander, for the $100 donation, Andrew Yang. Alexander, you are our donation leader. Thank you, Christy, for the $1 donation. And that is all we had for this stream. I'm going to go grab some merch to pass out. People will come do the selfie line.
Whatever you want.
excited.
It's here. It is on.
Yes.
White or blue? White or blue?
It's some of my favorite things.
Gotta pass out the merch.
Yes! Great.
Want that bubble
Yeah,
sticker?
I'll take one. Why not?
White or blue?
White, please.
White. There you- Oops, my bad. I just heard you're in a caucus grant and so happy.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah.
I know. Well, I saw
Bumper sticker?
2 days yesterday at Arrow.
Awesome, thank you. We're open more. So who is going to get the shout out? Who is going to get the shout out? Donate right now through the gang.com. Hi man, would you like a bumper? White or blue, sir?
Then you know how. Yes.
We're down to 2.
We need about 1 million more like that.
Thank you, Jason, for the $5 donation in there. White or blue, sir? White. Thank you. White or blue, sir? Oh wait, I'm only on blues.
That works.
Thank you.
Should make a list of like the husbands. I love Mrs. Faulkner.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So I'll ask the first question, and then you can ask the second question. We'll be good.
Absolutely. You're the bag.
Breaking news. We have resupplied, and also breaking news. Zen just donated $100 to. Ooh, white or blue for you guys?
Yeah, we've got a bunch of
They're good. Breaking news. Zen has just donated $100 to Andrew Yang's presidential campaign and is now tied with, I forget who, for the donation lead. White or blue, sir? Blue. There you go. So who's getting the shout outs? Right now it's Zen and Alexander. It's Zen and Alexander at $100 each. Oh, thank you, Jessica, for the $5 donation to Andrew Yang through the yanggame.com donation link. Will this phone load so I can load your donations?
Come on. 1, 2, 3. This way. Got it.
Well, that's not good.
Yeah, I know. Okay.
Last time when I was in Burnett,
Thank you, Robert, for the $50 donation to Andrew Yang. Thank you, Jason. I think I already got Jason. I think I did get Jason.
No, but I just specifically.
Selfie line has been moved, which means we are also moving.
Can you do that? And I need
Oh no, what just happened to the frames for a second? Let me fix that. Frames. Frames are fixed.
You decide where you want to be. Sure. Or do you want to be on the other side too? You decide. There's a great big space.
We got a rock. And then picture. Yeah.
You want to is in it or you want it without? Okay.
1, 2, 3.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Very exciting.
Okay.
All right. All right. Thank you.
We got to take him real quick.
So do you agree? There you go.
Very nice to meet you.
Too bad. Sorry. Are you new to us?
You're hearing things from Andrew Yang that people aren't necessarily talking about and maybe thinking about them, but
Yes, and yeah. Yes, yes.
extreme taking place in that country right now. There's a lot of convenience associated with that, but there's unthought about consequences. There also, and Andrew has taken the time to think about all these things and he's bringing them to life. So I really appreciate that. I also appreciate his approach to education,
5:30
where
the doors open.
vocation and tech trades are
Well, yeah.
high priority.
They're help set up and what. All three Jeffersons are going to be for high school. That's why we need help out there. Wonderful.
Yeah, I do like the fact that it's not politician. A concerned citizen with the entrepreneurship and motivation to make a difference and at least hit the issues in front of us here in this part of the country to start making these things and not just the convenience of this big technology that take place,
What is this? Local press interview? Let me see if I can stalk Andrew before he leaves. Do we have any more donations coming in? Sorry, I've been running around passing out merch. It's Alexander and Zen. Zach just said, we gotta go, we're gonna miss the bus. And I'm talking to a live stream.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm giving them the narration. And then Andrew was like, that's okay. You spoke at the beginning, right?
Yes, I did.
Awesome. Are you, what was the county?
I'm the county chair.
County chair. So you can't share too much, right?
Not very much. That we're very excited. We think we'll have the biggest turnout ever. And
That's awesome.
yeah. He's the only candidate we've had come twice.
Wow. Only candidate that's been to Jefferson twice. Andrew, can I get a quick shout out for Zen and Alexander?
Sure. Thank you, Zen and Alexander, for the awesome contributions. Yeah, you're making history with us. Let's win. Thank you, Zen and Alexander.
All right, stream. That's the end of it. See you at the next one. Oh, wait. That's at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time.